Justin, the United States just lost 92,000 jobs in a single month, and economists are pointing directly at one cause: Trump's trade war with Canada, with Canada's $155 billion retaliation now crushing American industries. Unemployment has jumped to 4.4%, and what comes next could push this into America's worst economic crisis in over a decade. Before we dive into this explosive story and uncover what the media ignored, subscribe right now and turn on the bell. February 2026, the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics releases its monthly jobs report. The number? Negative 92,000. The U.S. economy didn't gain jobs, it lost 92,000 jobs in a single month. Unemployment jumped to 4.4%, the highest level in over 2 years. At the same time, across the northern border, Canada has deployed $155 billion worth of retaliatory tariffs against American goods, targeting the exact industries that employ the workers now showing up in that jobs report: manufacturing, agriculture, steel, and automotive. And here is the number that should stop every American in their tracks: $700. That is how much this trade war is already costing every single American household per year, according to the Tax Foundation's official 2026 analysis. Not a projection, not an estimate. That is happening right now today. But here's what they are not telling you on most channels: the 92,000 job losses and the $155 billion Canadian retaliation are not two separate stories. They are the same story, and today I am going to connect every single dot for you. Pause for 1 second. If you're already shocked by what you just heard, smash that like button right now. And I want you to stay with me, because what I'm about to show you in the next few minutes is the part of this story that even financial analysts are not fully connecting yet. The most explosive details, they're coming up right now. So what exactly triggered this economic crisis? Let me walk you through the exact chain of events step by step, because this did not happen overnight. It starts in early 2025 when President Trump imposed 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports and 10% on Canadian oil and energy. The stated goal? Reduce America's trade deficit, secure the border, bring jobs back to America. Canada's response was immediate, fierce, and calculated. Prime Minister Mark Carney, former governor of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, one of the most financially sophisticated leaders on the planet, did not blink. He launched a retaliatory tariff strategy of surgical precision. Canada targeted $30 billion in American goods first, then methodically escalated to $155 billion. The targets were chosen carefully: orange juice from Florida, peanut butter from Georgia, wine from California, spirits from Kentucky, steel from Pennsylvania, vehicles from Michigan. Every single product selected to cause maximum political pain in maximum political locations. Now here's where the cause and effect becomes impossible to ignore. The industries Canada hit with $155 billion in retaliatory tariffs are the same industries that showed up in the February 2026 jobs report as the biggest losers: manufacturing, agriculture, steel, automotive. This is not a coincidence. This is economic warfare working exactly as designed. According to Global News, NBC News, and Fox Business, all confirming the same Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the U.S. shed 92,000 jobs in February alone, and previous months' job growth numbers were revised downward, meaning the damage has been building longer and cutting deeper than the official numbers first showed. Meanwhile, in January 2026, Trump escalated further, threatening 100% tariffs on all Canadian imports, not 25%, 100%, Carney's response. He called it, and I quote directly, bluster. He signed a new strategic trade and defense partnership with Japan on March 6, 2026, just 4 days ago. Canada is not panicking. Canada is pivoting away from the United States entirely, and America is losing 92,000 jobs a month. So here is the rhetorical question every American must ask themselves. If the entire goal of this trade war was to bring American jobs back, why are 92,000 American jobs disappearing in a single month? Right now, drop a comment below. I want a real-time poll. Type jobs if you think this trade war is destroying America's economy. Type tariffs work if you think Trump's strategy will eventually pay off. I read every single comment, and I will personally respond to as many as I can. Let's go deep into that jobs number, because 92,000 is not just a statistic. It is 92,000 families. The February 2026 jobs report, released by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and confirmed independently by NBC News, Fox Business, and Global News Canada, shows this. The U.S. economy shed 92,000 jobs in February 2026. Unemployment rate, 4.4%, up from 4.1% just 3 months ago. And critically, previous months that were originally reported as job gains have now been revised downward, showing smaller gains than first announced. Which sectors were hardest hit? Manufacturing, the exact sector that Canada's $155 billion retaliatory tariffs directly target. Here is why this matters at the mechanical level. Canada is America's largest supplier of aluminum, lumber, potash, and critical minerals. When Canadian goods face 25% US tariffs, every American manufacturer who uses Canadian materials faces higher input costs immediately when Canada retaliates with $155 billion. In counter tariffs, American exporters lose their Canadian buyers overnight. Both sides of that equation destroy American jobs simultaneously. According to Columbia University's Energy Policy Institute, Canadian minerals and metals tariffs alone add $7.5 billion in extra annual costs to US industries. That cost does not disappear into thin air. It either crushes profit margins, raises prices for American consumers, or eliminates jobs, in most cases, all three at once. And the Tax Foundation's 2026 analysis confirms what every American household is already feeling: $700 more per year in costs because of this trade war. And the trade deficit, the original justification for the entire policy from day one, has not significantly improved. So let's be precise about what the scoreboard shows. As of March 2026, Trump launched a trade war to bring jobs back. Result? 92,000 jobs gone in 1 month, $700 extra annual cost per household. Trade deficit unchanged. This is not analysis. This is simple arithmetic. Now that 92,000 job loss number does not exist in isolation, it directly connects to what is happening in financial markets right now. And here is where it gets even more serious. When the Bank of Canada held its interest rate at 2.25% on March 8, 2026, just 2 days ago, and when Canada simultaneously demonstrated through its treasury operations that it would not be loosening fiscal policy to absorb American tariff pressure, several things happened in financial markets at once. First, the Canadian dollar showed unexpected resilience. Analysts at Morningstar had forecast continued pressure on the Canadian dollar due to tariff uncertainty. Instead, Canadian bonds gained 1.7% in February and early March 2026, according to Scotiafund's monthly investment monitor for March 2026. That is institutional money moving into Canadian assets, a confidence signal. Second, on March 9, 2026, yesterday, the Globe and Mail published analysis flagging emerging stagflation fears in the U.S. market. Stagflation, that is the worst combination in economics: rising prices and rising unemployment at the same time. The $700 per household tariff cost is the inflation side. The 92,000 lost jobs is the unemployment side, both happening simultaneously. Third, U.S. equity markets, particularly in materials, energy, and automotive sectors, are absorbing volatility directly linked to Canada's countermoves. Canada supplies approximately 60% of U.S. crude oil imports, along with massive quantities of lumber, aluminum, potash, and critical minerals. When Canada signals long-term trade diversification away from the U.S., American companies dependent on Canadian inputs face supply chain uncertainty and markets price that risk in immediately. Connect the dots. Canada's fiscal stability plus Canada's trade diversification plus Canada's $155 billion retaliatory tariffs equals a three-way compounding pressure system that is squeezing us markets from multiple directions at once. And the February jobs report is the first major economic data point confirming the damage is no longer theoretical. It is real, and it is accelerating. And here is the absolute kicker, the development that changes the entire trajectory of this story. In February 2026, the United States Supreme Court issued a ruling that directly limits President Trump's tariff authority. According to Reuters, dated February 22, 2026, the ruling weakens the executive branch's ability to use tariffs as an unlimited unilateral weapon. SCOTUS essentially told the White House, "You cannot escalate tariffs without legal constraint." Think about what that means for a moment. Trump's entire trade war strategy against Canada has been built on one thing: the credible threat of unlimited tariff escalation. The 100% threat in January 2026 was the ultimate expression of that strategy. Now, the Supreme Court, America's own highest court, has partially removed the legal foundation of that threat. And Prime Minister Carney already knew something was coming. He called Trump's threats bluster in January before the ruling was even issued. After the ruling, Canada moved even more aggressively. Japan signed economic diversification accelerating. Washington's leverage over Ottawa is shrinking in real time. Meanwhile, the July 1st, 2026 USMCA review deadline is now only weeks away, the critical moment when the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement must either be extended for 16 more years or allowed to expire in 2036. That negotiation, already poisoned by 18 months of trade warfare, is now happening under a cloud of legal uncertainty about Trump's own tariff authority. The U.S. came back to the table in early March 2026, according to BBC and CBC, for the first time since Trump canceled talks in October 2025. Translation: America blinked first. The stakes are in the hundreds of billions of dollars, millions of North American manufacturing jobs, the future architecture of the most successful trade relationship in human history. That is not a financial story anymore. That is a civilizational story. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. Seriously, this kind of deep financial and geopolitical analysis gets zero promotion from the algorithm unless real people support it. Hit subscribe, tap the bell. It takes 2 seconds and it keeps content like this alive. Now let's keep going, because the reactions from both sides of this fight are absolutely fascinating. Let's talk about how the key players are responding, because the contrast could not be more dramatic. Prime Minister Mark Carney has been almost unnervingly calm throughout this crisis. On January 29, 2026, speaking at a trade conference covered by Al Jazeera, Carney hailed multiple new trade deals and explicitly said he expects the United States to respect Canadian sovereignty. That word choice, expects, from a head of government directed at his largest trading partner, is extraordinary in its confidence. Carney has also publicly reframed the entire crisis narrative, where most politicians would be on the defensive. Carney has gone entirely on offense. According to Brookings Institution analysis, his core argument is this: Trump's trade aggression is actually forcing Canada to become more diversified, more resilient, and ultimately a more valuable partner for the rest of the world. He is turning a geopolitical attack into a competitive advantage in real time. On March 6, 2026, 4 days ago, Carney was in Tokyo signing a comprehensive strategic partnership with Japan covering defense, trade, and energy. Canada is literally redirecting its economic infrastructure away from American dependency. This is not a short-term reaction. This is a permanent strategic pivot. On the American side, the Trump administration's public posture remains defiant. Treasury and trade officials continue to frame the tariff structure as negotiating leverage for the USMCA renegotiation. But behind the scenes, the pressure is mounting from unexpected directions. On February 12, 2026, the U.S. House of Representatives voted 219 to 211 to reject Trump's tariffs on Canada, a bipartisan rebuke defying GOP leadership. That vote happened inside Trump's own Congress. The political coalition behind the trade war is fracturing. U.S. business groups, manufacturing associations, agricultural lobbies, energy companies have been increasingly and publicly vocal about the damage. Canadian buyers have already begun sourcing alternative non-U.S. products for goods previously purchased from American suppliers. That market share, once redirected, is extremely difficult to recapture. And here is what the experts are saying. Financial analyst Zechner on BNN Bloomberg, speaking on March 9, 2026 yesterday, made a statement that deserves to be heard clearly. His exact words: "The biggest winner so far in this conflict is Vladimir Putin. Let that sink in. America's trade war with its closest ally and neighbor is producing a geopolitical outcome that serves the interests of adversaries of the entire Western alliance." Gazero Media's Ian Bremmer has framed the central going forward question as this: how does Trump fight the Supreme Court on trade? The legal landscape has shifted. The economic damage is documented. Canada is not yielding, and the American jobs numbers are now confirming what economists were warning about for 18 months. To fully understand what we are living through right now, we need to think back, because history does not repeat, but as Mark Twain reportedly said, it rhymes. And right now the rhyme sounds uncomfortably familiar. Think back to 1930, the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. The United States imposed steep tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods to protect American industry. The result? America's trading partners retaliated. Global trade collapsed by 66% over 3 years. Historians broadly agree that Smoot-Hawley deepened and extended the Great Depression. The lesson learned was so profound that it shaped the entire post-World War II global trade architecture for 80 years. Think back to 1971, the Nixon shock. President Nixon unilaterally suspended the dollar's convertibility to gold and imposed a 10% import surcharge without warning. Global markets went into turmoil. It took years for international monetary confidence to recover. The lesson: unilateral economic shocks by the world's largest economy send reverberations that outlast the original policy by decades. Think back to 1988, the original Canada-US Free Trade Agreement, the foundation of what became NAFTA and then USMCA. That agreement was born from the recognition that American and Canadian economies had become so deeply integrated, particularly in automotive manufacturing, agriculture, and energy, that economic separation would be mutually destructive. A single car component can cross the US-Canada border 6 or 7 times during the manufacturing process. Every tariff on every crossing adds cost, every delay adds risk. And think back to 2018 Trump's first term, when 25% steel and aluminum tariffs were imposed on Canada that year. The economic damage was significant enough that a new deal, the USMCA, was negotiated within months. Canada held firm. Canada refused to accept terms that violated its core economic interests. Canada won most of what it needed in the final text. The difference in 2026 is this. Canada has a more financially sophisticated negotiator in Carney, a more developed trade diversification strategy with Japan and others, and a U.S. Supreme Court that has weakened the legal authority behind the tariff threats. History is not destiny, but the patterns are unmistakable, and every time in the last century that a major economy has tried to use aggressive unilateral tariffs against deeply integrated partners, the result has been damage on both sides, with the aggressor ultimately returning to the negotiating table. America is already back at the table. The question is, on whose terms? Take 1 second right now, hit that like button if this breakdown is giving you context and connections that you have not found anywhere else. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who need to understand what is actually happening. Thank you, and let's finish this out, because the implications analysis coming up is the most important part of this entire video. Now let's talk about what this really means across every dimension, because the consequences of 92,000 lost jobs and Canada's $155 billion retaliation are not just economic. They are political, legal, constitutional, and geopolitical all at once. Start with the numbers already on the board. 92,000 American jobs lost in February 2026 alone. Unemployment at 4.4% and rising. $700 extra annual cost per American household. $7.5 billion in additional annual costs to us industries from Canadian minerals and metals tariffs alone per Columbia. University's Energy Policy Institute and the trade deficit, the original justification for the entire policy, has not significantly improved according to the Tax Foundation's 2026 analysis. For Canada's economy, the picture is more nuanced. The tariffs are painful. Canada shed 24,800 jobs of its own in recent months, but Carney's diversification strategy means Canada is absorbing that pain while simultaneously building alternative economic relationships that will outlast whatever political situation exists. In Washington, Canada may emerge from this crisis with a more resilient and globally connected economy. Now, the political picture: Trump is caught in a compressing vice. On one side, the Supreme Court has weakened his tariff authority. On the other side, his own House voted 219 to 211 against his Canada tariffs. On a third side, Canada, far from capitulating, is signing deals with Japan and calling his threats bluster. For a president whose entire brand is built on projecting negotiating strength, being outmaneuvered by an ally on multiple fronts simultaneously carries real political cost. The domestic political math is also deteriorating. The $700 per household annual cost shows up in grocery bills, vehicle prices, and construction costs. 92,000 job losses show up in congressional districts. In an era of intense cost of living concern, those are politically toxic numbers in exactly the swing state manufacturing districts that matter most. On the legal side, the Supreme Court's February 2026 ruling is potentially the most consequential single development in this entire saga. It does not end the trade war, but it constrains the executive branch's ability to escalate unilaterally. Multiple states have filed additional challenges in federal court. The fundamental constitutional question, how much tariff authority does the president actually hold versus Congress, is now live, contested, and unresolved at the highest legal levels in America. And internationally, this is the most underreported dimension of the entire story. When the United States centers an extended, damaging trade war with its closest geographic ally and largest bilateral trading partner, every nation on Earth receives a signal. American partnership comes with unpredictability. Canada's Japan deal is not just economics. It is a geopolitical statement broadcast to the entire Indo-Pacific. Canada is open, reliable, and diversifying. Other G7 nations are watching this unfold and drawing their own conclusions about how deeply they can depend on Washington as a stable long-term partner and as BNN Bloomberg's Zechner said on March 9th, the biggest winner in this conflict so far is Vladimir Putin. The North American alliance is consuming itself in an internal economic war while adversaries observe and benefit. So here is what happens next. 3 scenarios. Tell me in the comments which one you think is most likely. Scenario 1, the deal. The July 1, 2026 USMCA review deadline forces a genuine breakthrough. Trump, constrained by the Supreme Court ruling, facing a fractured congressional coalition, watching 92,000 jobs disappear monthly, and seeing Canada successfully pivot toward Asia offers a face-saving compromise. Tariffs are restructured or significantly reduced. The USMCA is extended for 16 years. North American supply chains stabilize and begin recovering. Markets rally sharply on the news. Scenario to the grind. Both sides remain locked in a war of economic attrition through the summer of 2026. The USMCA review becomes a prolonged negotiation extending well past July. Tariffs remain in place. Canada continues diversifying toward Japan, the EU, and other partners. U.S. industries continue absorbing elevated costs. Monthly job numbers continue showing damage. Markets remain volatile. The integrated North American economy continues its slow structural erosion. Scenario 3, the collapse. The USMCA renegotiation fails entirely. Trump attempts further escalation. The Supreme Court and Congress block him. Canada responds with additional targeted retaliatory measures. The integrated automotive supply chain, particularly in Ontario and Michigan, fractures under sustained pressure. Multiple U.S. industries face genuine supply crises. Economic damage on both sides runs into hundreds of billions. The ripple effects reach global markets, and U.S. allies begin openly questioning Washington's reliability. What to watch in the coming weeks? Any signal from the resumed USMCA negotiations in Washington, the Bank of Canada's next rate decision, further Supreme Court or congressional action on tariff authority, whether Canada's Japan deal signals a broader permanent diplomatic pivot, the clock is ticking. July 1, 2026 is weeks away. The decision made in the next few months will shape North American and global economics for a generation. The stakes could not be higher. Let me give you the 5 things to remember from everything we covered today. 1. The United States lost 92,000 jobs in February 2026 alone, with direct documented links to the ongoing Canada-US trade war. 2. Canada has deployed $155 billion in retaliatory tariffs engineered with surgical precision to target politically sensitive American industries. 3. The U.S. Supreme Court weakened Trump's tariff authority in February 2026. The legal foundation of the entire trade war strategy is now contested. 4. Canada signed a landmark Japan trade deal on March 6, 2026, actively and permanently reducing its economic dependence on the United States. 5. The USMCA review deadline of July 1, 2026 is approaching, and what gets decided in the next few weeks will determine the economic architecture of North America for the next 20 years. This story is far from over. In fact, we are entering the most critical phase. Subscribe right now so you do not miss the next major development, because this moves fast. Drop your comment below. Type jobs or tariffs work. Let's get a real debate going. I will be in the comments reading every single one. Until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay ahead of the story.